Director Moore Umakunde. Director Olson.
Here. Do we have compliance with the open meetings law?
Yes, Madam Chair, we are in compliance.
Great. Next item is comments from the public, and we have two people who have signed up for comments tonight. The first is Liz Cranstead.
Franchise. It's a super easy name.
Okay.
Oh, you got
Maybe
that wrong.
if I don't look at it, maybe if I hear it. So.
I'll let this person enter. Yeah, he's here to speak. Oh, is he still able to sign up for public comment if he's a couple minutes late? No. Okay. So you're not going to go. You can have a seat. You're not going to be able to speak during public comment because you're late.
Oh,
They took it away already. Next time. Oh my gosh, get an interview. Sorry about that. Okay. Good afternoon, board. I've been here before. My name is Liz Franchak. I'm an adjunct instructor of Spanish at the college and have been for 12 years. I'm also the executive director of the MATC Fast Fund. I'm here today to advocate that the college reinstate the free Chromebook and hotspot program. The success of this program has been well documented, and I understand this documentation has been submitted to the college. It was decided to discontinue the program effective this semester because, as I've been told, the pandemic's over, campuses are back open, computer labs are available to our students, which many of those facts are true. But I think there's other factors that play into our students' ability to access technology. Our computer labs are typically not open past 6 p.m. and have limited hours on the weekends. Our students are, as you many of you probably already know, are not what we call traditional students, right? Most work, many have families, many lack reliable transportation or childcare. How are our students expected to only rely on the computer labs? I do know that there's a program that I think it's $200,000 that's going to be used for lending through the library, which I think is great. I just think we need to do a little bit more first. As a faculty member, we have been required for the past couple of years to have very robust Blackboard shells for all of our classes, whether it's face-to-face, online, or high flex. That means a lot of the information is provided online, homework assigned through ebook portals, discussion boards are used regularly, and students are expected to have laptops in order to be successful. For the fall 2020, spring 2021 Chromebook and hotspot program, 91% of students who received a free Chromebook from the college were very satisfied with it. 86% said it was their only device for schoolwork, and 75% said the hotspot was their primary source for internet access. More of note is that the persistence rates for those who received this technology assistance, not only was the persistence rate gap met, but it was surpassed. In a control group, those who did not utilize the Chromebook and hotspot program, there was a 64% persistence rate from fall 21 to spring of 22. For the students who received the tech aid, that rate was 67%. The technology gap is real. It's not going anywhere, pandemic or not. Our students continue to need our help. If the college is truly serious about helping our students succeed and retain these students, I think helping them with technology is a necessity. At the Fast Fund, we've teamed up with a local nonprofit called Digital Bridge. We purchase refurbished laptops for $150 and provide them to our students. We have applied for 2 different technology grants through United Way, where we've gotten $20,000 over the past year. We've helped almost 200 students with technology aid with that $20,000, and then once that money was gone as well. But we are a small band-aid to a much larger wound. Not sure where I'm at with time, but I just have 2 real quick testimonies I wanted to read from our students that the Fast Fund has helped with laptops. One woman said, I feel truly blessed to have received my new laptop. This opportunity allows me to go back to school after trying to complete my degree for the 3rd time. Each time I started, life always seemed to have other plans for me. I'm a single mother of 6 children, and going back to school was just a dream. Getting the laptop put me in the position to win and graduate. I'm deeply grateful for this gift. Another student went on to say, I want to thank everyone who has donated to the Fast Fund and who will donate to the Fast Fund. This has really helped me further my education goals. I am a mother of 7 who has been trying to further my education. This has been a tremendous blessing because I could not afford a laptop, and with the new COVID outbreak, some of my classes went virtual. Without your help, I would not be able to attend my class and would have to drop out until I could afford a laptop. With Fast Fund, I am able to start school on the right track. Please consider reinstating the free Chromebook and hotspot program at MATC. Thank you.
Thank you. We have one other person who signed up, Sam Burgos.
Yes, that's correct. I would like to ask if we could possibly replace me if there's the issue of time. We have a late arrival, and if we want to hear from the student, I can back out. And we can get student testimony. I'm not sure if that would be permitted.
Is it the same topic?
Yes.
It is.
Sure, I'm fine with that then, as long as you're. I will need, I'm gonna make sure that you sign in, so we have that record then when you, after you finish speaking, okay?
Okay.
Excuse me, y'all, just 1 second.
Can you see?
I'm Jermaine, y'all. I'm a student here, work with Path Fund, good to see all y'all. I don't think I know any of you guys, but I'm representing for the students right now. So we're talking about these computers. I know, to just start off, how MPS did it with the hotspot, how it helped my daughter. And now I'm gonna talk about with me. So the most recent example, midterms just happened. And if you're in accelerated classes, that just ended too. So I got finals and midterms. When you go to the Milwaukee Public Libraries, they loan out laptops, but you be having to wait in line. They don't be having a bunch of them. And so it's always something. Then sometimes they laptops don't even want to connect to the Wi-Fi. They be having issues too. You got to call a number to be like customer service, some type of IT type stuff. And they don't even have an IT person to help. They just be like, well, bring it back. And it just an inconvenient process. So what happened, I went to the library to get a laptop. They was out. I had returned it, and you got to wait 24 hours before you get another one. So I returned it, go back to get it, because they told me I reserved it like it's supposed to be there. So I go get it, it's not there. I like to work at night because I do a lot of community service, being in the Black Student Union, the National Society of Leadership and Success, Men of Color Initiative, being an Uplift Scholar, and just really being heavily involved on campus. And so here I am, now I'm having computers issues because I can't get the laptop from the library, and I gotta have my midterms. I like do like Sunday by 11:59 or something like that. So in May, it's not open on Saturday. I mean, they used to be open on Saturdays to study and stuff like that, but they're not open no more to use the lab. So now, and the library hours is different. You only get 2 hours, the finals and midterms and stuff, like you get 90 minutes, sometimes 3 hours. But even at the library, that 2 hour time, it go by, and just that environment, you know what I'm saying? You can't really get in the zone like you want to because it's extra stuff. I'm dedicated, so I'm gonna do what I have to do. But having a laptop, I can work at 1 in the morning. I like to get up early. I can be at 2. It's just convenient having a hot spot. I can work in the car, and it just make moving and living life so much easier. I'm like, it seems simple to me, but I don't know what the budget issues or whatever is. But I know for a fact, I end up getting a low grade on my midterms. My finals class professor worked with me. The midterms professor worked with me, but I know I could have got a better grade. I'm trying to go to Marquette. I'm trying to like really do something major. And this is a simple situation that a laptop having a big impact on. Like now I got one because they help me, but I just work whenever I feel like it. And I like that because I don't have to try to crunch everything into 2 hours. I don't have to always try to compact so much. I can just retain the material, and I've been so enjoying my classes. I'm being able to talk to my teacher when I feel like it. Oh, now we can FaceTime. And so I don't know what the issue is, but that's just from a student's perspective of having access to these technologies.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for your courage.
No problem.
Next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. And that is from our regular board meeting on September 27th, 2022. Do I have a motion for approval?
I move approval.
Do I have a second? A second. Thank you. Any comments or questions or corrections? If not, we have a motion by Director Foley and a second by Director May to approve the regular board meeting minutes of September 27th, 2022. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next item is the approval of the consent agenda items, which include the bills from September 2022, financial reports of September 2022, the human resources report, the procurement report, and the construction report. Can I have a motion for approval?
Approval.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
That was Director Baker, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I was
Slightly muffled, but
Yeah, no, that's okay. Yep, and Director Diaz, thank you. Any questions or comments on any of the items? Director Baker.
okay, so as you know, like every month I look at how we're doing in our diversity hires, and our percentages this month were actually more positive. And so I want to highlight that. And I want to keep seeing that, and I hope that that's like something that we're starting to get a handle on. On the other hand, I am continually distressed when I take a look at separations from the college. And, you know, we have, you know, on a page of separations, all but 2 of them are people who have resigned, not retired. And they're from things like our retention and completion area, college advancement. I know we're having a difficult time hiring. I don't like to be losing people. And this is like extremely concerning. So I'm highlighting it for the board because I just think we need to get a handle on what's going on in the college. We've talked about it off and on, but I really think that we've got to stop this bleeding.
Other questions? Okay, we did have a motion by Director Baker and a second by Director Diaz to approve the consent agenda items. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? All right, we move on to our board action items, and tonight we have Mr. Kevin Mullen from Baird who is here, so you can come up here. And in the meantime, I will take a motion for resolution F0246-10-22, authorizing the sale of a $1.5 million general obligation promissory note series 2022-2023E of Milwaukee Area Technical College District. That wasn't in the beginning, that was entertaining a motion. Like it's a long.
I move adoption of resolution F0246-10-22.
Second,
Second.
thank you.
Well, thank you. And first of all, I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you. I'm Kevin Mullen on John Meehan's behalf. So I passed out earlier a summary of today's sale, and I think that this is probably something that you're very familiar with, but if you don't mind, I'd just like to go through some of the highlights of what occurred today. There is, I think, some exciting news for a bond geek like myself around this sale that I'd like to extrapolate on, but the important parts, you sold $1.5 million general obligation promissory notes today. There were 2 bidders, and the winning bidder was Fidelity Capital Markets at 3.667%. So the first thing that you're probably surprised by is that there were 2 bidders. Usually you have between 4 and 7 bidders and a lot of participation on this. It is really a reflection of what's happening in the bond market. There are a lot of market players that are unsure about the direction of interest rates. And today we actually saw a rally in interest rates. Interest rates were up this morning, which was good for you. But I think it caused some people to step back and say, well, we're not sure that we like the market right here, and they weren't participants in the sale. But thankfully you had 2 of your well-worn participants here. And I think that this is a very accurate and good reflection of what the interest rate environment is. We also had 3 bond issues that sold for the city of Wauwatosa today. They're a AAA rated community, and they were selling, the amount of their bonds was in the neighborhood of about $10 million. Similarly, we had 2 bidders on both of those transactions, and they also normally attract a very, very wide audience. So, it's just an indication of what's happening in interest rate markets right now. but I also feel like this was a really terrific representation of where the market is. So I think you should feel good about that. In terms of what this borrowing looks like, it's a 5-year note. It will be dated November 10th, and then it comes June 1st of 2024 through 2027, with the first interest payment being in June of 2023. Attached to the back of this report is a summary of your bond rating. Your AA1 was maintained by Moody's Investors Service, so there's nothing surprising in that report. It's very similar to the reports that you've seen recently. Nothing dramatically has changed. And as I mentioned earlier, 3.667%, and the winning bidder was Fidelity Capital Markets. Page 4, I think, is the piece that you probably key in on the most. This is the update of your continual amortization of debt service. You have an annual target all the way over on the right-hand side of roughly $43.6 million for debt service, and that's a target that you want to maintain. And you do a really good job, obviously, of projecting that and maintaining that through this forecast. So reading left to right, you have the calendar year payments, which are the annual mortgage payments, so to speak, for these loans that the technical college has outstanding. In 2022, existing debt was roughly $36,541,000. And you can see that debt service on your existing debt tails off. And then you add in monthly $1.5 million, with the exception of the Series C borrowing, which is larger than $22 million. This represents the 5th in the series of 12 borrowings. And we've loaded what the actual interest debt service payments are on the column final for Series 2022-23E. If you take all of those and then the estimates are in blue over to the right, that's the estimate of where we expect these issuances to come, plus a projection of what your future debt service will look like in future years. And you can see we're still comfortably within that target. So, I think good planning allows you to not really worry terribly about these, changes in interest rates. So you've done a good job of projecting for these moments. And as I mentioned earlier, the rating report is attached to the back. So with that, I'd certainly answer any questions you might have regarding this issuance.
One comment, on the page 5, the first page of language that we've seen before.
Mhm.
It is just interesting where I always look at factors that could lead to a downgrade in our rating. And since we just got our information and our tax base increased by a lot, that certainly helps us
Absolutely.
have some confidence
Yeah.
going forward.
It's really interesting you point that out. Again, I think it's interesting, but the state as a whole, property values were up roughly 14% throughout the state, real property values. So growth in homes, not new building, but just the growth in value in the state of Wisconsin throughout the state. And that's a strength that was reflected here.
Any other questions? Okay, if not, we had a motion by Director Polly and a second by Director Mays for resolution F0, right here, 246-10-22. Go ahead and we have a roll call vote, please.
Director Burr,
Yes.
Director Case,
Aye.
Director Diaz,
Aye.
Director Foley,
Aye.
Director Mendieta Ramos,
Aye.
Director Mays,
Aye.
Director Moore Omakonde, Director Baker,
Aye.
and Director Olson.
Aye. Next, we have resolution F0247-10-22, which authorizes the issuance of $1.5 million general obligation promissory note series 2022-2023F of Milwaukee Area Technical College District. Do I have a motion?
I'll move approval of resolution F0247-10-22.
Okay, and do I have-
Second.
Thank you. Any questions about this? This is standard, so we can go out to market for next month. Not, we had a motion by Director Baker and a second by Director Foley for resolution F0247-10-22. Could we please have a roll call vote?
Director Case,
Aye.
Director Diaz,
Aye.
Director Foley,
Aye.
Director Mindy H. Ramos,
Aye.
Director Mays,
Aye.
Director Moore Umakunde, Director Baker,
Aye.
Director Burris,
Yes.
and Director Olson.
Did you do?
Yeah, I was first.
Oh, okay. Aye. Sorry, I was on the next motion already. I was like, we missed Erica. I was like there, so.
I
sorry.
can aye
Yep.
again?
No, you can aye again. No, I was on the next one looking at that, so sorry. Our next resolution, which I was already at, is for our tax levy, and it's F0248-10-22 to establish the fiscal year 2022-23 tax levy. Do I have a motion?
I move approval.
Second?
I'll second.
Thank you. And as a reminder, since this is setting a tax levy, we do need a 2/3 majority of the board. We need 6 people in order for this to pass. So just wanted to put that out there before we get there. So Jeff is here. If you want to give us any highlights of this or to answer any questions related to the tax levy.
Well, it's pretty well explained on the attachment that was presented. But one thing I wanted to mention is if you look at last year, we had the tax levy on $100,000 home was $100.94. This year, it's $89.98, a reduction of $10.96, which is a significant benefit to the home or to the taxpayers in this district. So, and that's because there was an additional amount of money that was $14 million was allocated for property tax relief. So the state pays for this as opposed to the local taxpayers in all of Wisconsin. So, and MATC, of the $14 million, MATC received roughly $4.3 million, or 31% of the $14 million that was allocated. So it was a benefit for our taxpayers.
Any questions for Jeff on the tax levy?
So I hate to be sort of the Gabby person, but I got just one.
Sure.
Because I know it seems like it's really simply explained here, but I just, I'm still struggling a little bit. So our tax valuation went up like $11.5 billion. Is that correct? Am I reading that correct?
Yeah, the net new construction,
Okay, but we get 66 million.
we get 1.5. The net new, we get an additional 1.5.
Oh, so we get that,
Yes, we do.
and then we also get 1.5.
Yes, we get the 1. We get both. Let me maybe explain this a
Sure,
little
sure.
differently. So the property tax relief aid came from the state.
Yep.
Okay, so that was a shift. So it was taken off of the local taxpayer roll. Okay, then we had net new construction within our district. And we benefited from that to the tune of roughly a little over $1.5 million. And I think last year was like 1.3 million net new construction. So each year we have new taxpayers who have to pay the same rate as the old the existing taxpayers. So it's a benefit for the college in that respect. It's not, so if there's new development here, we benefit from the new development. Net new construction is what they refer to it. And
Okay,
it's determined by the Wisconsin Department of Revenue. So
so the levy limit doesn't prohibit us from taking the money that is levied, and then we also get additional on top of that. That's what you're saying.
yes, for the net new construction, we benefit from that.
Right, I got that.
Okay.
Okay,
Can I think I want to just clarify. So we increased the amount that we're able to spend on the revenue limit based on net new construction,
Yep,
but the
yep.
state came in and reduced the burden to taxpayers. But that
Yeah.
additional amount we can't spend. That's not spendable. That's only reducing the burden on the individual taxpayer. So there are two different things that are happening here, and I just want to make sure that we don't get a double adding on to what we can spend. To be clear on that.
So just to clarify the dollar amount. So that was the local tax levy was shifted to the state. And we benefited, so that there was $4.3 million was taken off of what
Right.
we received here, but we now receive centrally from the state.
Correct. Which reduced the local taxpayers' burden from that. It wasn't
Absolutely.
spendable, is what I'm
Yes,
trying
it
to
was,
say.
it was a nice benefit.
Right, so we don't get all of the 11.3 at the college, because some of that goes to this, the additional. So in paragraph 2, the fiscal year 2022-2023 valuation is, I'm rounding it up to $11.3 billion above last year's valuation. Okay, so that money, some of that goes to the state. That's used as tax relief.
Are you talking about the valuation?
Yes.
Yeah.
Could I try this?
There you go.
No, any valuation.
Right.
So the amount of property tax, our assessment is a mill rate. It's a
Yes.
percentage of the assessed valuation of the property. Okay. So we are not allowed by current state policy to increase the amount we are recovering from existing property tax payers on account of the appreciation of property that's been there. When somebody comes in and builds a new NML tower and adds new dollar value to the assessed valuation of all property based not on appreciation, but based on a new structure or expansion of existing property, then we do apply the mill rate to that new additional valuation within the district. So as I understand this, the increase in valuation in the past fiscal year was $11.35 billion, which is a 12.57% increase. And our tax rates will now apply to that extra $11 billion. Did I get that right?
I believe you're correct.
Okay, because which is what that was essentially, I was trying to clarify that
Yeah.
11.3 actually, I mean, obviously that's in our entire district. but
A percentage of that.
No, we're not getting that amount.
We'd like to get $11 billion,
That
but
would
that's
be
not in the
super
cards.
cool. Laptops for like everybody, I'm just saying. But our portion of that is on that whole amount. That's
Yeah.
what I, my confusion is a little bit on the what goes to the state, what comes back from the state, because a lot of that has changed over the last dozen years. So,
The $14 million is a completely separate thing.
yes, I understand.
Okay.
I understand.
Again, as always, thank you too for breaking things down for us. You have a question, you broke it down in simple terms for I can understand. Thank you.
Any other questions? I did have a motion by Director Foley and a second by Director Diaz to establish the 2022-23 tax levy as presented. And we do need a roll call vote for this. So Glenn, can we have a roll call vote?
Sure. Director Diaz,
Right.
Director Foley,
Aye.
Director Mendieta-Ramos,
Aye.
Director Mays,
Aye.
Director Moore Umakundi,
Right.
Director Baker,
Aye.
Director Burris. Yes. Director Case
Aye.
and Director Olson.
Aye. We have our two versions ready. The next resolution, which is F0249-10-22, is to approve the fiscal year 2021-2022 annual budget amendment. And this is a statutory piece. And again, we will need a 2/3 majority of the board when we take a roll call vote on that. Do I have a motion to someone making a motion on that?
I'll move approval of F0249-10-22.
Okay, and do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, and Jeff is there again.
Yeah,
If people
if-
have questions or anything you'd like to present, Jeff.
Well, I think this is for the previous fiscal year, so we just need to make sure that we had approval, where we have approval, so we're amending for adjustments that have occurred. And if you think about it, we have to, our budget is put together by fund and by function. So we say by fund, we have like the general fund. Fund 1 is the first page that we see here. That's our general fund, and we had to make adjustments amendments, so that we are within the amounts that that we have spent actually. And I can go through each one of these individually if you'd like, but these are basically accounting entries to make sure that we have not overspent our budget. So we're adjusting the budget, we're amending the budget for last year to be within those limits. So this is 2022 and the next one will be 2023 because we have better information from the state of Wisconsin. You know, and so we'll talk about that in a minute, but so if you want me to go through each one of these, I can to explain them. Or it's up to
I
you.
don't think that, unless there was anything significant that you,
No, this
that
is
was
routine.
noteworthy. Right,
This is every
unless
year
there was
we-
one item on there that you wanted to bring attention to. From
Nothing
your
that,
perspective, otherwise I'd entertain questions. from
some are
other
pretty
board members.
self-explanatory. The first one, who talks about OPEB costs. So if you think about OPEB costs, they're considered prior period adjustments, and we have to, for state purposes, WTCS purposes, put these into a certain function, and it's called general institutional. So there's an adjustment to take the OPEB costs and put them in the general institutional fund, and it get a, I should say, function. And so that's what this first one is. It's just a journal entry to move things around. To fall within the state requirements. No.
Okay. Did have a motion by Director Baker and a second by Director Mays to approve the fiscal year 21-22 annual budget amendment. We do need a roll call vote. Glenn, could you please do that?
Director Foley,
Aye.
Director Mendieta Ramos, Director Mays,
Aye.
Director Moore Umukundi,
Aye.
Director Baker, Director Burris,
Yes.
Director Case,
Aye.
Director Diaz,
Aye.
Director Olson,
Aye. Did you want to try her?
Director Mendieta Ramos,
Hi.
Thank
Sorry
you.
if you didn't hear me before.
We did, I did, and I want to make sure we capture that. Okay, thank you. Next resolution is F0250-10-22 to approve the fiscal year 2022-2023 annual budget amendment. And again, we will need a 2/3 majority of the vote. So do I have a motion?
I move approval.
A second?
A second, is it, Chair, is it possible, should we take all of these two? Or are they all as one? They're all the just
Yep, they're
different,
all-
okay. My
They're all
bad.
2020.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Yep, I'll second.
Okay, thank you. We
And I
have
even know
we
what
have
I'm
a motion and a
seconding.
second. So these are annual budget amendments. Anything noteworthy or questions?
No, we received better information from the Wisconsin Department of Revenue that at this time of the year, that's when which we didn't have in June when we originally set up our budget.
Not seeing or hearing any questions on that. If not, we did have a motion by Director Foley and a second by Director Baker for resolution F0250-10-22 to approve the fiscal year 2022-2023 annual budget amendment. Glenn, please have a roll call vote.
Director Mendieta Ramos,
Hi.
Director Mays,
Aye.
Director Moore Umukunde.
Aye.
Director Baker,
Aye.
Director Burris,
Yes.
Director Case,
Aye.
Director Diaz,
Aye.
Director Foley,
Aye.
Director Olson.
Aye. Two more, Director Baker. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Next is resolution F0251-10-22 to approve the designation of the MATC state public officials. This is statutory. We have to have this annual resolution and it is a state requirement. So do I have a motion?
I move approval.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Al, if we have any questions on this, if people, it is sort of a, as I said before, a statutory requirement. I want to make sure I can, if people do have questions regarding it, they get those answered. Okay, I'm not seeing or hearing any. This will be a voice vote, so we had a motion by Director Foley and a second by Director Diaz to approve the designation of the MATC state public officials. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Okay. And our last resolution is F0252-10-22 for program discontinuance. Do I have a motion?
I move approval.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
A second.
Thank you. Dr. Dakora, would you like to come up and share?
Thanks so
the
much, Chairperson.
program?
Good evening. So I know the list is alarming. We have 8 programs listed and the Dr. Baker's looking at me here. What's going on? All right, so good evening. Virtually all of these programs were initiated by WDCS. And in virtually all cases, it's a program code change. We're not dropping, we're not discontinuing these programs. I can go through them one by one. They converted into something more maybe updated, upgraded, or streamlined with other programs in the state. So 7 out of the 8 are exactly that. So let me tell you about the process. So all the programs that are discontinued must go through some suspension process. And this suspension period goes for 3 years. And then we go through that. So this way we make sure that every single student in the program completes the program, or we help the students to convert to the new program. So we don't leave any students behind. And that's why we suspend the program, discontinue the program, regardless of who initiated this. And like I stated, 7 out of the 8 came from the state. So the one that did not come from the state is a sales specialist program, and we upgraded this to become a sales customer experience, more kind of updated. And then we changed the program title, we added some courses, and then the state does not allow for 2 similar programs to have 2 different codes. If they are substantially different, then we would have 2 programs. If they're not, they say, hey, discontinue this and create this new one. And that's exactly what happened. So this is in a nutshell what we did in this case, and we're seeking your approval. And this goes to the state, and then it becomes official.
Director Foley.
I'm dismayed by the titles on the discontinued
All right.
programs. I'd like to try to understand this a little better. We've got a IT information security specialist course or program listed. Certainly we are still teaching the fundamentals of that. Do we have to change the coding every time we change the content of the program, or why is there a code change here?
Not exactly. So this converted just to be specific. The code changed from something to something else to be more consistent with what's offered within the state. So I don't know if that's making sense.
So we changed the title or the content? Or
we are allowed to change the content within any program. I think they allow us to go up to 20%. Within 20%, you can change, upgrade the content, and so on. Anything that's more than 20%, then we need a major modification. So this is not the case. They do allow for us to upgrade, on ongoing basis and so on. So in this case, again, let's say that our sister college, Waukesha, they have a program code that's different than ours. Another district, different. The state would come and say, you know what, this is not making sense. Can we all look into the codes, streamline the codes, and have one code that we can follow, for instance? We used to have so many codes, so many different names, and so on. So the state may initiate something like this in some cases. Now, I hope that answered the question.
Yeah,
So we're allowed to really kind of,
Yeah,
yes, sir.
So Becky was the
If I
dean.
may address, I'd like to try and help answer the question. Hi, I'm Becky, also Dean for Manufacturing. Construction.
Can you please come up here to make sure we can
Yeah.
capture what you're saying on the, thank you.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Becky Alsop, Dean for Manufacturing, Construction, and Transportation. A couple of these are my programs that I wanted to explain just by way of example what happened with one of them. The aviation program. Yes, another favorite of mine. That program for several years since I was the supervisor seemed to have very high student fees. And after several years of trying to problem solve and research this, working with our partners at the state, I learned of the table of student fees and that every program in the state falls somewhere in this table of student fees. And essentially what they had done is lumped aviation maintenance with the flight programs. And it's pretty easy to understand that the student fees for a flight program are significantly higher than maintenance. I mean, I was comparing it to automotive maintenance and saying maybe a little bit, but this much. So through that investigation, we were able to go back and they said, well, the only way to do this is to make it a separate code. So that's why it was really, if I may, a bureaucratic change so that we could better align the student fees in aviation maintenance with a new program code to separate it from the higher student fees in the flight program. So some of them are simply administrative bureaucratic reasons.
Did you want to address the CNC? And then we changed the code to allow more credits as well. So
I don't have the history on that
Oh, that's
because
all right.
I was not the instructional supervisor at the time. I'm sorry, but thank you.
yep,
I hope
absolutely.
that helped you.
Yeah, so in some cases, the code allows for additional credits within the diploma as well.
So please tell me we are still teaching all of these.
All of these things,
Thank you.
every single one of
Me
them
too.
in probably, like I said, more updated way. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Power plant mechanic.
Yes.
How is that changing? I know when we talk about, one of our goals here is to work on achieving climate justice. And we're talking about how power plants are often a source of greenhouse gas emissions. How are we changing? How is this changing? Or is it just a code that's changing?
Honestly, my notes reflect only a code change. The program continues to exist in the same exact fashion that it used to.
Okay.
Yep.
So it's not taking anything
No.
into consideration?
No.
Okay.
And it is on the books as active program. Let me just tell you exactly what the state is telling us on this. Go ahead, Dr. Baker.
Yeah, no, it should be noted, and perhaps Director Moore or Kunbi might want to visit some of our new technology programs in energy. Because I mean, MATC has a great footprint
Yes,
in
yes.
green energy and, from our solar farm, which we have had for a while, to like the South Campus facility, and I think North Campus too.
Geothermal.
Yeah, it has geothermal,
Right.
right? So that might be interesting for you to learn more about.
Precisely, and I, based upon the presentation that we had a couple meetings ago, my colleague had a great back and forth about. I realize that we're moving in that direction, so I'm just, this is, maybe it's me being nitpicky a little bit. However, as we move in that direction, that's kind of a question. Someone who is of my thinking is going to see if we can find all those nooks and crannies, et cetera. So I was just.
We'll be glad to.
I was just curious.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Any other questions? I think you allayed maybe any concerns that these programs are being eliminated versus maybe just restructured through some of the
Yeah, and just for the record, though,
administrative stuff.
yeah, anything that we decide to discontinue, it has to go through our advisory committees. By the way, we spend a lot of time with them, making sure that, look at the enforcement needs, local, regional, and so on and so forth. There is a very extensive process that we follow, and that would become before you, and we tell the exact reasons behind it as well.
I think maybe, in the future, like sometimes we get these things, these items, and they have a lot of detail in them. Sometimes more detail than we need. So in this case, maybe this was a little less detail. Like, I think some of those, because I freaked out and sent something to Pat to say like, what's going on? And so maybe, sometimes evaluating that as the board is preparing for this, we can also sort of circumvent some of this before we.
Absolutely, and we did attach, 5G, I think, in the district board notes, but we'd be glad to expand on the, maybe what we told you about it. Yeah, if you look at, we provide like half a page of information on this. But if, again, Dr. Becker, if you'd like to know more.
I didn't get it.
You didn't get it? It's, I think it is there, isn't it? If you
The
click.
background is just one paragraph.
All it says is that we're changing codes. And it
Okay.
lists them.
We'll provide more information then.
Yeah, and I think to Director Baker's point, sometimes we have different, this happens we don't do this every month, we don't do this frequently, and you have different directors sitting around the table. So historically, it might be something that you're very familiar with, as are, people in there, but as people sit around the table who have to vote on it, just that consistent paragraph that this is done because of the state and codes and like that, it would just
Okay.
maybe put people in the right mindset as they're approaching these and came in there. So, yep.
I like to say that, I would like to second what, Foley said, that I think it was the title. That it was like it's being discontinued and not being improved. So when we see discontinued, like, we're looking at some of those programs, we know we need them. So I think that the title can be adjusted a little bit with improvements or something.
Sounds good.
A quick question.
Yep.
Is discontinued a technical term that has to be stated?
Yeah.
That we're going
Oh,
to discontinue
right.
one
Yeah. Well, correct
to
me, thank
continue the
you.
other?
Well, but I thought what you were saying was like in the elaboration of the
Yeah,
paragraph. It's
something,
good. That's
yeah.
why I was fully agreeing with you.
Yeah.
The agenda item will have to stay that way because that is how the state requires you to put that on your agenda. But within the content the board gets in the explanation, it can be elaborated to say this is more or less a title program and this is what it is that we're keeping. So does that make sense? Okay.
One more
Thank
thing
you
to
for
add, in the past, the state did not require us to come to you if they initiate these changes, but they changed the guidelines. So now, even though they initiate the change, we still have to come before our board, get the, approval and then report back, so.
And that right there, what you just said would have been helpful as a couple
Absolutely,
sentences
yeah.
in that paragraph.
Yeah,
And then we were like, oh, how come we never did this before? Oh, there
Yes.
was a state at the, there was a change at the state and now we have to do it. Boom.
Yep.
And it probably could have, yeah. Okay. That being said, and I think we have a plan for next time we see these coming in front of the board. We do have a motion by Director Diaz and it was seconded by Director Mays to approve resolution F0252-10-22 for the program discontinuance of those programs that were items. So this is a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, that is all our action items. Thank you, Dr.
Thank
Becker.
you.
Next, we have the chairperson's report. So I'd like to first start out by mentioning that Director Foley attended the Wisconsin Technical College and District Boards Association fall meeting in October 6th through 8th. And as you recall, this was on the topic of parliamentary procedure.
Yes.
So would you like to share on that?
Well, I really shouldn't say anything yet because you haven't uttered the magic words, but okay.
Okay.
We had an excellent presentation from the parliamentarian for the Association of Community College Trustees, the ACCT. And I can tell you that after 30 or 40 minutes of her presentation, the rest of the day and a half went much more quickly because there were no questions about what we should be doing. It really made a difference. The program, I believe, is being posted to the Wisconsin Technical College District Boards Association website. You put that phrase in your browser, you will find it. There are no competing pages. It was really good and it was not terribly long. There are a couple of other important things from that meeting that I'd like to talk about. One was that Ji-Hong Lee, who is the president of the ACCT, was there and showing the flag and trying to encourage more participation at ACCT events. He knew that we didn't have anyone registered to go to the meeting in New York, so he's doing his homework. He did mention that they are looking at creating a project of using the data they have from, I think he said 5,000 institutions about what worked and what didn't work using online instruction. So some of those institutions must be companies as well as colleges. I don't think there are that many out there, but I may be wrong about that. So we had a conversation about that, and of course he's looking for money to make that possible. He doesn't know where he's going to get it from, there's some ideas we can talk about, but he's looking to do that. Next from that meeting, the legislative summit, which is in January. Apparently the DBA group will be focusing on issues related to serving the incarcerated and formerly incarcerated. So if that's an issue you are particularly interested in, you should plan on joining us in Madison. Even if that's not the issue you're particularly interested in, you should join us in Madison and talk to, what do we call these people? The guys in Madison? No, no, there's another word.
Yeah, the official word.
Yeah, they're all informative, and I think we've got a track record of having an impact as well. So it's important that people participate. Fourth, you all rolled your eyes when you heard I was working on this, so I'm going to insist that we deal with it, and that is bylaws for the District Boards Association. They have been rewritten, and the approval process is that it has to be approved by the delegates of the 16 technical colleges. Those delegates are supposed to get instructions about whether to approve or disapprove or try to amend the proposed new bylaws for the organization. So we are going to be asked to put that on the agenda item so that we can give a yay or nay in support by our November board meeting. So we should have some conversation about how to do that. Let me tell you, it is a thrilling document to read. Better now than it was. Fundamentally, each technical college that's participating in the organization appoints a delegate. The delegate selects someone to represent that tech college on the board of directors, and the board of directors governs the institution, selects officers, etc. That's the fundamental structure. There are subcommittees. No one is required to have a member on the subcommittee. Any member of a board of directors of a technical college can participate in any committee, any monthly or quarterly meeting activity in any way they choose, but only one vote per college, no matter how many people they have there. That's the fundamental structure, and it's governed by Chapter 181 of the Wisconsin statutes, which nobody seemed to know, which is why there are problems with bylaws. Madam Chair, I'm going to ask that we put the bylaws discussion on our agenda for November. And we can talk about how you'd like this to be presented so that it doesn't bore everyone to death.
Well, I was going to ask you, is that something that board members should have in advance to read through prior to the discussion then?
Yes, I think the way I would probably do it would be to give you all copies of it and then to highlight the things that I think are important to take note of. And of course, you can read the whole thing. This document originated in the 1990s, and I think there were some political fights over how it was going to be structured. It bears some scars from that. And I don't know how much of that people will support getting rid of or not. The goal is to have either this process rejected or new bylaws in place before the April meeting when the next set of officers are selected, because there's some changes in how officers are selected.
I think that makes sense. Are they available right now as far as that? Are they still being finalized?
The process, they're not ready. The commitment we made was that I would get a draft out by last Monday, which I did, that the two other people working on this with me would get their comments to me by yesterday, which I have them both now. And then I was going to get this out to the DBA president for distribution to the boards directly next week.
Okay. Got it.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that. As another note, MATC is hosting the Wisconsin Technical College System State Board meeting that happens every 4 years, and that will happen here in this room on November 15th and 16th. So the state board will hold its meeting here, and MATC will have the opportunity to showcase some of its special areas and a tour for the state board meeting. Right now, we are still finalizing the exact date for the winter commencement here. It will be held at the forum again, but it's either the 16th, 17th, or 18th.
Depends on if there's playoffs.
Right, basketball. So it'll be 30 days out from that. So I would say by our next board meeting, we should know then, right? Because that would be, okay. So hopefully before that, so put that on there. And I think that that venue has served us well for our commencement over the last couple ceremonies. And now I'd like to introduce Erica Case, who is our representative to the MATC Foundation, and she will provide the report.
Sure, thank you. Is that proper protocol?
I guess.
I
don't know.
I didn't attend the parliamentary procedure.
All right.
All right, so the MATC Foundation Board met on Thursday, October 20th. At this meeting, the Foundation Board was presented with and or discussed Sarah Keppert, MATC Promise Coordinator, and Sarah Deschelets, Scholarship and Foundation Operations Coordinator, provided a detailed report on scholarship programs, including the new Ellen and Joe Chakota MATC Scholarship, MATC Promise, and a new Student Parent Scholarship. The Chakota MATC Scholarship is MATC's first full ride scholarship, and all contributions to the scholarship fund are generously matched $2 to $1 by Ellen and Joe Chakota. This semester, MATC awarded the scholarship to 123 students, 81% of whom are students of color. For the spring 2023 semester, the college has already provided more than 500 or received more than 500 applications. The board also approved the foundation's annual audit. The foundation has again received a clean audit, which demonstrates sound financial practices and internal controls. Julie Ebert, Foundation Board President, and Chantel Berg, Foundation Vice President and Incoming Development Committee Chair, discussed fundraising activities to secure $2.5 million that will leverage a $5 million match from Ellen and Joe Chakota. Directors of the board had the opportunity to work through different scenarios of how to be a good friend raiser and door opener as a part of fundraising campaign. Finally, the district board members wish to personally thank to make a year-end contribution to the MATC Foundation. Please visit matc.edu/donate or contact Laura Bray, MATC Foundation Executive Director and MATC Vice President. That is my report.
Thank you. Did just want to share with the board, if you remember last meeting, we approved the President's Evaluation Tool Part B. Dr. Martin and I talked about Part A, and so that will be coming forward next month for the board to look at on that. I think it's in a good place, and I think you'll like the changes as far as the recommendations that the board had last time, and just sort of organization and some section headings in that. So you can look forward to that into our next monthly meeting. And with that, yes, Director.
I think this is the right place to ask this. So I looked at Director Foley to make sure that he didn't think I was doing something wrong in Robert's rules. Coming this season, as we're heading into this season, MATC does a lot of events, like showcasing things as well as our graduation. And since campus is open and we're doing more things, I just hope the board gets invited to some of them. I missed a lot of things last fall, and there's usually a culinary showcase. We're not doing that anymore, or whatever. But so it's just a note that I read about some activities that come out in the newsletters that we get, and I just think it'd be wonderful if board members are sort of invited to some that are appropriate for us to be at.
Yeah, we have historically, I think, just during the last few years with events either not happening or in place or taking a different venue. Exactly. So I guess that's an assumption that I'm making, that as those are returned and that board members do that when they're available, we'll continue to get invitations. Okay. But yeah. Good. Cool. Thanks. Yeah. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Martin for the president's report.
Well, thank you, Chair Olson, board members, faculty, staff, community who's here tonight. We had just a wonderful talk about events, Director Baker. We had a wonderful event called MATC Day, and we hosted it in person for the first time in 3 years, 1,000 plus employees right across the street. So it was a day to really celebrate. Our theme was Stronger Together. And because we do believe that we're going to be stronger together as we come together and look at what we can do to move this college forward. And so we started out by just really having that celebration. We had actual pom-poms and folks just really cheering us all on, which was really great. But we did talk about our successes, things that have gone well. We had And I think you all got the results of the SSI, the Student Satisfaction Inventory. So what happened is we read some of the student comments, and they were read by students, current students. And so that was really powerful to hear those comments read about the great job that folks are doing at the college. Another highlight of the day was that we celebrated Mrs. Skinner, an alum who just celebrated her 90th birthday. And she was there, and she started a nursing scholarship in honor of her mother, who was one of the first African-American practical nursing graduates, and the recipient of one of her scholarships to complete and was successful was there to thank her and gave her roses. Laura Gray saying happy birthday, at least heard all of us saying happy birthday. So it was really, really a great event. Part of the next part of that MATC days, we had our social justice chair, Dasha Kelly Hamilton, who's also the poet laureate for the state of Wisconsin. She was there as well to have another piece of us to really look at starting conversations, and the kinds of conversations that we start and how we talk to one another, and think about our situation in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion. It was a really powerful piece that we looked at. And then we did have a section around the PACE survey, which is our climate survey for our employees. You're going to hear more about that at our next board meeting, more of the details about that. And then we should, hopefully we got a lot of feedback from people who met in small groups to talk about what we could all do together to move the college forward to the next level. I also wanted to talk about another event that we had on campus. Last Friday, I really had the pleasure of being here for gallery night. It was our second year of hosting that downstairs in our gallery, our gallery area. And I really have to thank Julie Ashlock and all the team, including marketing, for really putting that together. And I think we have the booklet there to really see the wonderful artwork. And if you go around our hallways down the M and the C and the T, you'll see some of these artworks displayed. But it was great because that artwork includes 4 of our students' work, 2 of our alums, and 1 faculty member. So we're pretty proud of that. And the other piece that happened that night in that our gallery was that Dasha Hamilton was there again to do soapbox, which is part of what she talked about that day, with people getting up and being able to have a conversation or just express whatever their thoughts are and just have us listen and really hear what people have to say and just to hear the differences. And by that, we grow as well as individuals. So just wanted to share that. And then the marketing and communications department recently earned honors in the top 2 Your College Marketing Awards. A gold award was received for our social media or our online marketing campaigns, and a bronze award for successful recruitment of marketing programs. Congratulations to our Vice President, College Advancement and External Communications, Laura Bray, our Chief Marketing Officer, Tony Taliavia, and our entire marketing and communications team. And the highlight, of course, Dr. Diaz, our NACA Plus, who saw the fruits of his scholarship program in the paper. It's also featured by the ACCT newsletter, which you all received as well. So congratulations on that to our foundation for working on that in our marketing department to get that story published. So congratulations. Thanks. You're welcome. And that concludes my report.
Great, thank you. Next, we will move on. We have our district student senate report, and I'm going to call on our Eric Lemans to introduce our student rep.
Thank you, Chair Olson, Dr. Martin, and members of the board, MATC community and administration. It's my honor to introduce Patrick Casper again to this board for this year. He served last year as your student board representative from District Student Government Association and was reelected by his peers again this year. Patrick is deeply passionate about student leadership, the students at MATC, and the technical college student in the state of Wisconsin. He's involved already at the state level, which I'm sure he will mention in his report. But he called me as we were doing our election process and said, hey, is it too late for me to get involved at the campus level? So of course not. And so he ran for a couple of positions, and this is one of them that he won. The reason why, though, he wanted to be involved at the campus level is because he said he believes it will keep him on track both academically and personally, and believes in the process of student leadership for himself and his fellow students. So I couldn't be more happy to have him back with you. I hope you enjoy your time with him as much as I enjoy working with him as well. And with that, I'll yield my speaking time to Patrick.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you to Dr. Vicky Martin and the members of the MATC District Board and Administration. As Eric's already told you, my name is Patrick Casper. I'm very grateful to be serving as a student board representative of the District Student Government Association again this year. It's not that long, but it's kind of I think there's some cool stuff in here. So this semester has been a fantastic year for student engagement with our college and state student governance structures. SGA MATC has had the most participation this year in the election process out of the previous 3 years. Additionally, our first Wisconsin student government meeting hosted by Nicolay College, which is in Rhinelander, Wisconsin, had the highest turnout from MATC in the past 3 years as well. Overall student participation has been significantly higher this year, which shows increased interest in student leadership. Additionally, I'm very honored to represent MATC and Wisconsin Student Government on the executive board as vice president of the statewide student organization. I'm enjoying working in this role with all of the technical college system student leaders. As part of this role, I'm also looking forward to attending the first in-person WISCOR, which is the WTCS Conference on Race and Ethnicity, which will be hosted here at MATC on November 10th and 11th. I commend MATC for hosting this event, and I'm very excited to represent WSG at this event. Just for the board's information, the following is an excerpt from the WSG October 8th meeting summary, just outlining the advocacy positions we are currently going to be taking to the boys or men, the guys in Madison in February. So, and women. It's important. Wow. We made a lot of progress in the last 200 years. I appreciate that for a second.
Non-binary folks too.
But all of them, the people, we the people. Anyways, so this is what we're going to be talking to those people about. The recommended priorities for the 22-23 regarding advocacy. After discussion, these positions were agreed upon. They will be reviewed and approved at the November meeting. Investment in OER, which is Open Education Resources. If you'd like to know more about what that all is, I don't want to take up too much of your time, so just see me after and we can talk about how that benefits students. Further investment in Wisconsin grants and amend state statutes to align with the federal Pell Grant. Just trying to get more grant funding for students. The third advocacy priority, I can explain in greater detail once greater detail has been outlined, but it's basically an effort to increase WTCS student or alumni involvement on each WTCS district board, like this one. In conclusion, I want to thank you all for your time and the opportunity to present these updates and developments from the perspective of a student leader at MATC. I can't even tell you how much I'm looking forward to meeting with the board on any new concerns and developments students may have, as I'm very confident that we, the students, are in fact heard by this board. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Patrick.
We get to talk back. Next questions.
Sure.
Question. Thank you first and foremost. I did serve as on the SGA and student senate while I was here as a student. What, if any, resolutions have you guys done in the last 2 years?
So we have the OER that we've been advocating for OER for, this will be our second year advocating for it. So last year was not a budget year for the legislature. Wow, that's like 3 tries. So we were just getting it out there, putting the feelers out and letting know this is very important to us. But no action was going to be taken, and we knew that going into the seminar last February. So this coming February, OER is another thing, or it's the thing that we are continuing. And we had, I can't recall, and I don't have my notes in front of me from last year. We had 2 other positions, but due to it being our first opportunity to meet in person as WSG in quite several months at that time, we found it best to just consolidate our efforts from those 3 advocacy positions down to just the OER. So far, I mean, it's hard to say until legislation's passed, right? But from my experience and the other governors from that time that I've talked to, our advocacy day where we were executing the lobbying process was pretty well received. Was in contact with Chris Larson's office for a couple of weeks after the fact, and so that's the big thing, the big continuity right now is the OER.
Okay, and what does that stand for?
Open education resources. So those are used basically in place of textbooks. They're not copyright bound. They can be specifically tailored to any course, removing any material that's irrelevant to the course, adding any material that is relevant, and they don't cost the students anything.
Okay,
Mhm.
that's good. Now, so you said that you guys have like increased participation in the last 2 or 3 years. What do you think has, helped with that?
A lot of it has to do, in my opinion, and I've only been an active student back at MATC for now, this was 3 semesters in a row. I think a big struggle that we had with student involvement was post-COVIDism, we'll make up a term right now, we're gonna call it that. Because classroom interaction was kind of, people were still on high awareness about being in contact with each other physically. And it had also gotten very comfortable to not be in all that much physical contact with people, doing in-person things. And at the beginning of the year, health and safety, we had regulations in place that made it difficult and sometimes not possible to do in-person events and things like that. So the outreach to the students to raise the awareness was very low. The majority of my courses have been taken at the Oak Creek campus. Our outreach when we were allowed to, and health and safety determined that it was safe to be doing more in-person things. It looked a lot like myself sitting alone at a table, trying to do some outreach for SGA. It was just a very small involvement. And I think the difference, to answer your question that could have been sentences ago, is we've now reached a point where people are really ready and seem almost chomping at the bit, so to speak, to get involved with each other and really like actually interact and communicate.
Okay, so post-COVID, you guys have a better chance to have a presence.
Yes.
To allow students to interact with you guys a little bit more.
Yes.
So do you guys have an office?
SGA?
Yeah.
We have not met in any in-person meetings since my initial involvement in SGA. We were not capable at first, allowed, I don't know the proper term to use. There was a lot of discussion about changing some of the ratification of a new constitution, changing and having a requirement to have an in-person meeting room with telecommunication options and remote options. Our student involvement was actually, just to be brief, was so low that the Constitution was completely rewritten, and we did not have quorum at the district meeting to be able to ratify it, which that was scary, and I don't want to scare people, but I'm very confident in the involvement increase this year, and I just say, like, it seems to be between a 300% and 600% increase in involvement thus far.
Okay, so you have like a full board elected.
We have all of our offices filled.
And so you think you guys will be able to ratify your constitution soon, or?
I don't know. Being that I did most of the writing on it, I personally would like to see it happen, but it's more, at that time, it was because of the lack of student involvement and consolidating some things to try to foster the growth. And I personally believe that for the students, if the growth is fostered without having to change the structure of the student government organization, then it's not necessary. So we'll see.
All right, so have you guys done any surveys, maybe to start getting some of those student questions or concerns brought to student life or to the president's office?
So thus far on the campus level, we've had one meeting post elections. And we were just kind of determining where to go from here and trying to get a handle on being able to meet on campus, and these other things, and what is our outreach going to look like. So thus far, there's not been a whole lot of movement here in the end of October.
Okay, well, we got started. I'll definitely love to hear about it.
Thank you so much.
All right, so invite me to a meeting, I'll love to come.
Absolutely.
Thanks. Anybody else with questions? This is our student right here. We gotta have some questions, right?
Okay, thank you. Next item is our diversity, equity, and inclusion report, and we have Eva Martinez Hollis, who I believe is online.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. It is good to see everyone today. I have two updates pertaining to diversity, equity, and inclusion. One of them is that on October 12th, we hosted the grand opening of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Office. We had a ribbon cutting ceremony that included students and employees. It was such a wonderful event to not only symbolically open the DEI office, but also bring others together. Right now, I will have to say that I feel very lucky, which is also an understatement, because when I first started my journey at MATC about a year and a half ago, I never really envisioned that we would be opening an office of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Not to say anything negative about anyone, but I feel that this is a milestone for the college, and I personally and professionally would like to thank Dr. Vicky Martin for her leadership and support throughout the process when we first began having conversations about what it means to have an office of DEI at MATC. And I also would like to thank the cabinet and council for supporting this process and also supporting the development of the structure of the office in the upcoming year, and also the development of fiscal and human resources as well. We had wonderful students that also came to the grand opening. And as I'm reflecting and thinking about what that means for MATC and the district, I also think about the beautiful stories that have been shared with me and others throughout this journey. For example, the story of Jermaine, who presented today to you at the beginning of the board meeting, who has big dreams about transferring to Marquette University, and how the Office of Diversity and Inclusion can support Jermaine in his journey to pursue a business degree at Marquette University, and also utilizing the space as a space for not only inclusion and equity, but a space for belonging as well. As we open the DI office, I also think about the stories of Felipe Beltran, who is one of our leaders at MATC and president of Latinx Unidos. I think about the initiative that is coming up in a couple of weeks, where Latinx Unidos and our students will be able to run one of their first events at the Walker Square campus to really be able to highlight what it means to be a Latinx Hispanic student at MATC. Felipe has been an instrumental part of providing feedback and also in the Office of DEI, and is really looking forward to not only partnering with the DEI office through events, but then also be able to provide input and provide feedback in terms of what it means to have a DEI office at MATC. The office will continue to center on our students and student success, and it will also continue to focus on our employee success as well. Many of our employees have shared with us the need to have this a hub at MATC where they can also participate in different events, a hub where they can have a safe space for processing different ideas, different perspectives, different lenses, and also a space for support and a space where they can also share their talents and their beauty as human beings. So I just wanted to share a little bit about the DI office. I feel very excited to be able to work with all of you in partnership to be able to develop this office and develop a sustainability plan for the office and what it means for this office at MATC in the next 5 and 10 years. The second update that I have for you, as one of our students mentioned earlier, MATC will be the host institution for the WTCS Race and Ethnicity Conference, or WISCOR as we call it. We are expecting around 200 colleagues and students from around the state at MATC at the end of November, actually in a couple of weeks, November 10th and November 11th. I have been working with our state partners and also our internal partners, our MATC, such as Eric, who is here with us today, to be able to execute a conference that will be successful for our students and our employees and our colleagues across the state. We're very excited. I believe this is the first time that we hosted at MATC. And again, thank you to the support of Dr. Martin and the council for allowing and helping the DI office and our initiatives to flourish at MATC. Those were the two updates that I had for you. Thank you so much for your time, and that concludes my report.
Thank you. Any questions or follow-up? Okay, we will move on to our next agenda item, and that is our enrollment report, and I believe Sarah Adams will be presenting that.
Good evening, everyone. We sent the report to you previously, so you've been able to see that information. Just a couple of things I wanted to point out from the report. The first one is gender. If you notice on the gender, we do have more females than males, approximately 9,717. And we have males 6,723, and that's for the enrollment this semester. And the second point I wanted to point out from the information that was sent was our Hispanic percentage is at approximately 23% of our students are Hispanic students. And we give you the breakdown of the other students, but I just wanted to point those pieces out. And I also wanted to provide you with updated numbers as of this morning. As you know, our budgeted total for this semester is 3,904. We are currently at 3,778 FTEs. We have achieved 96.7% of our FTEs for the semester. And overall for the year to date, we have 4,515 FTEs, and we've achieved 54.4% of our total FTEs for the actual fiscal year. And I believe Jeff is going to share information about the budgetary effects.
I didn't receive the update information, but I did look at the enrollment through, I looked at the so if you think about it, there's for every 100 FTEs we have, it's the value of that is about 575,000 per 100. Something that we talked about in the past. And so what I did is I looked at the differences between fiscal year 22 and 2023. And there's 99, the difference was 99. So that's close, about almost $570,000 of incremental revenue compared to the previous year. And the difference between 2020 and 2023, which is a decline of 963, and that's about lost revenue is about $5.5 million. The difference between that year and this year.
Are there any other questions?
I do have a question. So you're saying that we went from like roughly almost 18% to 20, almost 23% on Hispanic?
For this semester, yes.
Oh, that's great news.
Yeah, that's why we wanted to share that information.
I was getting excited, but I want to.
You want to make sure before you get
Yes. The enrollment did increase over last year, and if you look in the information we sent, we'll give you the head counts are included, so you can see exactly how much we've increased over last year. And we're actually at the 16,769, and this includes both program students and non-program students.
Director Foley.
Quick question. We have a goal of becoming an Hispanic serving institution. Does that require a particular percentage of the student body to be Hispanic, Latinx, and what is that number?
Yes, so I know who would like to answer that, but it's credit. They have to be taking credit courses.
Okay.
Some of the increase is not credit, but what's good about that is the area that they're coming into, English language learners, those folks we can move into our program. So as long as they're here, we have an opportunity to really recruit them into our programs. So that's still good news that we are seeing more Hispanic students, but we are not at the level we need to be at the 25%. And I don't know what that number is going to be. We'll have to wait till the end of the year to really look at that and see where we're at. But that's one of my goals. So it will be in the data that you all receive from my goals.
Thank you.
I do have a quick question. I don't think you guys have seen me raising the hand.
Oh, sorry, you're behind me. This isn't the best stuff. So someone's got to be like, sorry.
I'm so sorry. So it might be a silly question, but I noticed that there's 600 students that says there's 2 or more races. Are we able to identify them or they don't want to?
Can we identify who the students are?
No, the race.
Oh, no, they check the space, it's 2 or more races, if they want to. Yeah, they don't necessarily say Hispanic and African American, they just check the space to say 2 or more races.
Because I'm wondering if giving them that option is perhaps keeping us from claiming some of those Hispanic.
Probably is.
Yeah,
Maybe we gotta get rid of that option.
we actually follow the kind of the federal standards when we divide our races. It's really based on the information we receive from the federal government. This is how they, census and everything. This is how they divide. So we do the same.
Thank you.
I like the creative thinking though. Any other questions for Dr. Adams on the enrollment report? Thank you.
If I may, it's not really a question for Dr. Adams, but it's a response to Dr. Director Mendieta-Ramos's comment. Do we have to follow the federal census guidelines in making those counts? Is that a requirement or is that just a custom?
No.
So for purposes of determining, are you an HSI, we have to follow the census data?
Absolutely, sir. We have to follow exactly what the Department of Education is telling us to report.
Who defines the HSI? Is that
It is defined by the U.S. Department of Education.
okay? Have we brought to their attention that this doesn't quite make sense?
We have, actually. We also have
Good.
brought to their attention for many, many years across the nation, the fact that the way they count the HSI or the numbers for HSI do not really align with the realities of the 2-year schools. Because a lot of our students, as we know, they start and stop, And according to the guidelines, the students that we have now, they have to be retained through to the end of the academic year in order for us to be able to count those students as part of the HSI number. Yeah.
Thank you.
No, you're welcome.
Any other questions? Okay, we will next go to the Milwaukee PBS General Manager's report, and I see behind me is Bodian Zachary, who is virtual and will be giving us that report.
Good afternoon, Chair Olson, MATC board members, Dr. Martin, and members of the MATC community. It's good to see you again. I have some exciting news to report. On October 7th, Milwaukee PBS presented the Wisconsin Broadcasters Association live U.S. Senate debate between Senator Ron Johnson and Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes. It was a resounding success in the studio and also with viewers. Milwaukee PBS Chief Programming Officer Dale Polachek reports that the ratings and viewership of the hour-long broadcasts beat out every single PBS station in the country by far. Keep in mind that any ratings over a 1 is considered a success. Milwaukee PBS enjoyed a 2.8 rating for the U.S. Senate debate, and a week later got a 3.2 rating for the Wisconsin governor's debate. The crew and producers excelled in their work on the U.S. Senate debate, And I'd also like to give a big thank you to MATC Public Safety, in particular to Chief Aisha Barco and Lieutenant Gary Marimoto. Moving on to other news, on November 14th, Milwaukee PBS will host a screening event for the upcoming new documentary about the history of Jones Island, presented by John Gerda. There are over 260 people who've signed up for the screening of The People of the Port. If you'd like to attend, please contact me. The terrific work of the Milwaukee PBS production team has been acknowledged by members of the Chicago Midwest Emmy chapter. Milwaukee PBS has been nominated for 7 Emmy Awards, and the ceremony takes place in Chicago in December. Congratulations to the Milwaukee PBS staff who are nominated and to Chief Content Officer Chris Hayes. Last Friday, I attended the quarterly meeting of the ECB, the Educational Communications Board, on which MATC holds a board seat. There was discussion of the upcoming master control operations between the ECB in Madison and Milwaukee PBS. We are on track to be live through the ECB in mid-January of 2023. Thanks go out to Dave Schenk, Kurt Schrader, and Dan Breivik for keeping this important project on track. This week, there will be presentations by internal candidates vying for the interim GM position. And turning to financials, I'm happy to report that Milwaukee PBS, that the Greater Milwaukee Foundation released its annual donor advised fund reports. And as a result of that action, Milwaukee PBS has already received $48,000 in major gifts. A major donor who's been gifting Milwaukee PBS at a substantial level has notified the development department and its leader, Chief Development Officer Dan Mueller, that he has put Milwaukee PBS in his estate, and this donor will soon announce his gift. Lastly, registration has opened for the annual American Public Television Stations Public Media Summit held at the end of February in Washington, D.C. I would encourage you to consider attending this informative and important event. And that concludes my report for this month. And if that's the questions, thank you.
I'd just like to mention that we are going to name an interim next week. So as Bodan just mentioned, we're going to be doing the interviews this week, and then next week we'll name the person.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Bodan.
Thank you.
And next, Rami is here to present our legislative matters report.
Thank you. Good evening. With the election just over a week away, all eyes are on the election, of course, but there have been 2 main issues that we've been focused on providing support to Dr. Isahaku, who is in the room with us this evening. He's been appointed to a legislative council study committee. I've mentioned this in prior meetings. The committee has met several times now, and the scope includes looking at offender employment opportunities. Dr. Isahaku has served on one of these committees in the past, and unfortunately, some of the proposals haven't moved forward. So we're hopeful this time that we have some opportunities to look at some new topics of interest that could be common interests in the upcoming legislative session. I've explained sort of the process for a study committee in that the public members, the elected officials meet together in a group, look at certain topics, discuss topics, and then with the ultimate goal of proposing legislative bill drafts once the legislative session starts. There have been a number of topics of interest, many that we've debated for many years: expungement reform, for example, ban the box, also issues related to critical documents that individuals need to gain employment, such as driver's licenses, social security cards, those types of things. So there are a number of topics in that space, but also employer tax credits, and also looking at some housing issues as well. Once the committee completes that work, it's the chair's discretion to put forward a proposal that the committee can either formally endorse or not. And then when the legislative session starts in January, again, some of those proposals will be drafted into legislative proposals to move through the process. Of course, with a very big election in November, the, opportunities will look very different depending on what happens in November and what the legislature is comprised of in terms of majorities and committee chairs. So we're kind of in a holding pattern to kind of see what happens there. And I'll certainly defer to Dr. Isahaku if he wants to add any more additional information specific to that particular study committee. There's also a committee that we've been monitoring on occupational licensing. We also have a representative on that committee and our very own director here. That's been more of a monitor because we just don't know what's going to come of it. There's a lot of energy on that topic of occupational licensing. There could be some proposals that could be helpful to students in the college, certainly some that may not be, depending on the direction of the narrative once that committee completes its work. And again, very much will depend on the outcome of the election in November, the direction that some of the policy discussions may go. Certainly it could look at reciprocity agreements. It could look at timelines for individuals to get licensed, statutory requirements there. Perhaps, I think there's been a discussion regarding when, like a student, even if they're not officially graduated yet, when they can begin the process to get licensed. So a number of things that could potentially come out of that committee. Again, we'll defer if there's any additional information that you'd like to add, Director, on that specific committee. And then, of course, the state budget process, which, is just moving right along despite the election. But again, if we have a change in November, that could change the opportunities, the challenges, what we'll be looking at, what we'll be managing next session. We'll also be having to work with the transition team who will have to then put their budget together. But we've been marching forward on working with the current administration. The technical college system has already submitted their budget request of the Department of Administration. And one item actually in the request is specific to the open education resources. So congratulations, students. Your voice was heard. We'll see if that's ultimately included in a governor's recommendation. That's one step among many, but right now we're just operating as we normally would, and we'll wait to see what happens in November. So I will end my report and then defer to others if there's any additional information you'd like to provide on the study committees, and also take any questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mary.
Well, the study committee has been doing a lot of work. Good afternoon, everybody. They have actually invited a lot of researchers across the country to come and show us comparative work with regards to what is going on with employment, what is going on with the unemployment rates in different states, and especially among incarcerated individuals. And what we are seeing is that there is hope that we probably can present something very, very meaningful, because we're looking at the red states especially, and they seem to be very progressive in moving formerly incarcerated individuals into employment. And we're trying to see those strategies and present it. It's very strange, but that's the dynamic we're seeing. I'm also very concerned about the number of individuals who have high school credentials and want to, go further to post-secondary education, and they're just sitting there. There's a 10,000 wait list. So my focus is on that, because I'm saying that corrections is not an educational institution. We have access and we have capacity. They should give us access, and then we would be able to get the 10,000 students enrolled ASAP as soon as spring. But of course, that's speculation. I'm hoping we can get some movement in that direction as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for your work on that committee. We're ready to move on to item 7 on the agenda, which is board monitoring. And Dr. Nikki Gonzalez-De Jesus will be sharing with us. And I think we have a report here on the student experience survey.
Thank you kindly. Hi, thank you so much for this time. I have invited with me Director of Institutional Research, Dr. Yan Wang. She's going to help us understand a bit more about what is it exactly that we did in order for us to collect the data on the experiences that our students are reporting across the college. But also she's going to talk about the methodology to assess the data. What I wanted to say is the why. One of the reasons why we're doing this is because we want to make sure that we are on track in meeting the needs and the expectations of our students. This is a very good way for us to track every other year or so how we're doing as a college. So you're going to see some of the data that basically talks about how we did a few years ago versus how we're doing now. We are compared with a benchmark of other institutions that are exactly as large as we are across the US. And one of the things that I wanted to mention is that we went up in terms of the satisfaction that our students report across the board. That is very, very good news on all of the areas that we assessed. However, of course, with every assessment, we also found that there's some things that we need to work on. One of the things, for example, that we know that we have to work on is ensuring that our students have flexibility in the courses that we offer, the times that we offer them, the modalities of the courses that we offer. Another aspect that we know we need to work on, for example, is ensuring that our students get a response from our staff, from our instructors, whenever they're emailing or calling, making sure that there is an on-time response to the student, especially for students who take their courses online, right? Now, what are our next steps? Our next steps, as we all know, as part of the framework of guided pathways, we're doing PDCA, plan, do, check, and act, right? Or plan, do, check, adjust. So we did the planning. We talked about what guided pathways would look like. We did it. It's here and it's here to stay. And now we see it's working. Based on the data, we see guided pathways actually works, right? Something else that we're doing now, the assessment is helping us to check what are the areas that we still need to improve upon? And then the acting upon it or the adjusting, we're now going to take a look at the data and we're working with our instructors and our staff to work on our action plans so that we can actually address these gaps. And with that said, I will open it up for question and answer after we hear from Dr. Wang about the assessment itself and the results.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I know you all received the video recording from Dr. Nadine, so I think she covers very well I know she was an IR person before, so that's maybe why. I don't know if you have any questions after hearing that recording. Basically, just one thing I want to add is we had a very survey heavy last year with students because we had to, usually we have like 3 surveys in here. Actually, we didn't even cover one of the student equity survey, but those 3 surveys are ones we scheduled every other year, a different year. Last year, because but then 2 years ago, we didn't do the SESI and SENS, those are engagement survey, and then we had to kind of put them all in 1 year. So students were very busy responding to all the surveys. But that's why usually we don't have this many in 1 year. So that's why we have this many in 1 year. And then it's good that we can see the results side by side. So you can see how well students responding to each one of them. So the big difference between the 2 engagement survey versus the satisfaction survey, the engagement survey is kind of we assess how students feel engaged with their different aspects in the college. The satisfaction survey is really about students assessing their experience with MATC from different campus area. So in comparison, those 3, the student satisfaction survey is the one that's most overwhelmingly positive. So basically we have like 8 campus area, all of them positively increased significantly. So that's really rare. I have been here for many years and that's the first time I've seen that happen. So that's very positive outcome associated with that. The other engagement survey, one of them is a SESI, that's among all the students. So that one also very positive. All the 5 benchmark scores went up from last set we administered that survey. The SENS survey administered last fall, that one is kind of mixed funding. I have some positive, some flat, and some negative. But one of the significant findings, just want to remind everybody, was not due to our lack of engagement. That was one because we changed our practice of not putting students into we call it refer to basic skills. So they used to be refer to basic skill, taking basic skill course before they can take college course. The college decided not to use that practice anymore, but based on the survey, it was still considered as a good practice for putting students on the right track to the college. So that one, I can ignore that, or we can all ignore that one, and then focus on the other 5. So So the results has been shared with like Dr. Nadine and then her team, and I have been invited to some other like subgroups to talk about those numbers. And then these results also have been used in our institutional scorecard to track some of Dr. Martin's goals in terms of advising, like because for example, the student satisfaction survey have the campus area. So we use some of the sub-skill scores to measure how well we do. So certainly last year's scorecard shows all of them kind of positively improved, and we met the target we set up for last year. So that's all very positive with that particular one. So any questions? Director Baker?
So you said, okay, we kind of overwhelmed students with like all three of these, which isn't normal, but what is our normal response rate? I mean, 6% is pretty low.
Correct. For that
14 is not
particular one.
great, you know.
Yeah, 14, like in the past, without 4 service in 1 year, we usually around like 12 to 13%.
Oh, really?
So yeah, so the 14, especially when I did look into that, is for such a large institution as us, 6 to 7% is not bad.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so because we're so huge, usually the smaller campus, smaller institutions tend to have a higher percentage. They give us like a grade to say if you are this enrollment, what is a typical average? So we're on average. Certainly we want to be better. Like this 11, 12%, 15% is actually very good. It's 15% is the highest we have gotten so far for the online survey. Typically, like the SESI and SENS used to be in the classroom survey. This is first year we did it online. So that's certainly a challenge. In the past, we always do is selecting randomly 100 classroom. So we take the survey to the classrooms, administer them, the students are captured. So usually like we have very high response rate when we did that in the classroom. But this is first year for the SESI and SENS, we did it online because like half of the class are online. So that's why we choose to use online survey for both of them first time this year. That's another hand.
So there was a lot of information to try to keep track of there. But something was said about, I'm gonna paraphrase hard, but like turnaround time between like student contact to whether it's are we speaking purely on instructors? Are we also speaking on academic advisors?
It was mainly on the instructor side,
Okay.
correct?
Okay. I don't, so this is just from a student's perspective. And so if we're talking about 6% roughly is your feedback. So I'm made of 94%. And which is kind of an odd position to be in because I'm very involved with. I have absolutely no time in my schedule. So I've had a big struggle at the college with getting, whether it's faculty, whether it's one of my instructors or an advisor to get back to me. It's been incredibly difficult, actually. I don't mean to call anybody out, but there's a man over there who introduced himself that I come to with things that have nothing to do with what he does because he'll get back to me within a day or two. It's been not my experience in other areas. And just as not just trying to air out agreements, I just want to shed some light on how a little bit of that 94% might be. I don't have much time to be filling these kinds of things out. And in my position, certain things are just barriers where you've seen that a lot of us students at MATC, there's only been 2 that have spoken here that I'm aware of tonight, are very, very busy, and like seconds and inches mean everything. And so that being said, for some situations, things moving more towards online for like advising, things like that might be very crucial. Things are generally up in the air and I'm juggling about 15 things at any given time. So for me to be able to walk into an academic advising office, when I realize that there's a problem with my account, with my credits, with my enrollment and that, and like be able to sit down and like, even if I have to wait around for a half hour or whatever, and get that handled is far beyond the 2 or 3 or sometimes a week, maybe even 2, that it's going to take for an advisor to actually get back to me. I've now learned how to use Navigate, but most of the times we're talking 3 or 4 days out before you can talk to anybody. And just as for specific impact this has, my financial aid was impacted by this because due to a semester in 2015 where I withdrew everything, I have continued academic probation that we're hoping to be over with after this semester. So I can't enroll in anything without specific approval. Well, I realized at the beginning of a math class while the wash period was going on that this was not gonna work with my schedule. If I wanted to fail, I better stay in that math class. So I had to get rid of it. I could not get hold of an advisor any way, shape, or form within that watch period happening. So I had to drop the class, and I knew that I needed to keep my 6 credits. So I tried to re-enroll in something else, couldn't do it. By the time I got to an advisor, had to pay the extra fee because the swap wasn't done, you know, seamlessly. And then in that, I think it was 3 or 4 days in between. It might have only been 2. My enrollment was estimated out at 3 credits rather than 6. So the Wisconsin grant, I just got an email last week. I was found ineligible due to my enrollment for that 2-day period. So there is problems. I do see that, like, statistically, things seem to be skewing in the right direction, but I'm a big fan of electronic. It's great, but I think as a substitute, this is just my opinion, MATC has gone a little heavy-handed on the telecommunication and the, what's the word I'm looking for, remote aspect, and it is the in-person aspect is really suffering hard. Thank you.
I want to thank you so much, first of all, for sharing your experience with me and with all of us. One of the things that we're doing at this time is we're waiting for, I believe there is a time now that we're going to take a look at our flex work arrangement. We really are going to dive deep into it and find out what's working, what's not working for our students, with our students at the center of the policies that we have in place. So that is first and foremost. I agree with you. There are issues that we need to continue to address. I continue to receive emails and phone calls from your peers, and it is our job to ensure that you have an experience from onboarding to completion that is a positive, seamless one. And that is exactly what we're here for. It is important that in your role, you continue to speak about those things. And it's also important that in your role, you bring in your peers, especially when we have our monthly chats with our students. Those are the types of things that are important for us to listen to, because we act upon it. We identify the issue at hand. We go to the root cause and we say, okay, this cannot happen. It is nothing that this cannot be acceptable. Right? And we try to address it as soon as we can. So once again, I want to thank you for your time and for allowing us to understand exactly the details of that experience. And again, I'm sorry that you had to deal with all of that. In future, get in touch with me so that you don't lose any grant money, really. It's a shame that you had to go through that. And I'm sorry for that, sir. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you for sharing.
Absolutely.
Why you
Yes.
I have a question about the data. Every one of these charts, of course, has a scale down the left side, but none of them are explained. Can you tell me on the sense benchmarks overall, what does 0.1, 0.2, 0.3 mean?
Oh, for the SASC and the sense, it's not it's not answer skill. It's the kind of standardized score to make it all on the same skill, because we didn't share with you the detailed report. If you get to see the detailed report behind each one of the surveys, like a 30 to 50 page report, and they're for each one of them. And then for sense and sense, they are all on the different answer skills. For example, one question asks you, how many hours do you spend on reading a book? The other question asks you, are you satisfied? So because they have different answer skills, they have to standardize it to get put them all on 100 as the score.
Okay, but for example, on the sense benchmarks overall.
Yes. Yeah.
Early connections is at about 0.5.
Yeah.
So 0.5 of what said what?
It's a set of 100, 0 to 100.
Okay.
So that at that.
So 100, not 1.0?
Yes. Yeah, it's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So maybe I should say it's 100, and then so it's 50 out of 100. So that might be easier.
Okay. So 50 out of 100. What? Said what?
Yeah, it's hard to explain. This is kind of basically a mathematical calculation to put all the answers on one scale. Like they try to standardize all the answers on one scale because the answers for different questions are different.
Okay.
So yeah, maybe I'm not making clear.
So just stick with me here for a minute.
Sure.
So the first set of bars has the title early connection. Okay.
Yes.
And the number is approximately 0.5. So I understand that to mean that 50% of the responsive group on that question
Mhm.
said something, that they're satisfied with early connections, that what? I don't understand what any of this data means.
Yeah, I know, because we didn't give you all the details behind it. This is very high level data. This is like behind early connections, there are like dozens of questions. So, and then some questions like early connection would be, did you talk to your advisor? Did you talk to a staff member? Did you talk to instructor? It's a bunch of questions behind that. It's a benchmark. So it's a group of questions that fit into that one benchmark, we call it.
So is it 50% of the respondents gave a favorable response to that set of questions? I
know what you're trying-
literally don't know what any of
I
this data
know.
means.
Let me try to think is how to answer your question, because that is calculating among everybody who respond to those questions, and then give it to like 0 to 1 is the highest you can get. That's why you can see like the other schools have higher rating, but then we're kind of at the average of the rating, like everybody responding to the same question. They have to standardize each question and convert them to on this 0 to 1 scale, so they can combine those scores. I don't know whether we can open the, we have the detailed report, so that maybe give you a better sense. So this is not about how much percentage give you favorable results. This is for each question they have like, they have to answer each question, and then they have to standardize those responses to put them on the same answer scale, so they can combine the response for particular benchmark. So I don't know whether,
So maybe.
Yeah, so
yeah.
I'm a numbers person, so I know what you're saying, but there has to be something when you ask them the question, they either said yes or no.
Correct.
Or they did a 1 through 5, or they
Yes.
did highly satisfied or
Correct.
dissatisfied.
Yes.
And when you translate that into usable
Data.
front-facing data, which
Yeah.
we're trying to be look at,
Correct.
I also don't know what 0.5 means. Is that like, 5-point Likert scale in the middle of the majority of people? Like, it is not translatable. This means nothing.
Mm. Yeah, I see.
And I'm a
This
data
is all the
person.
same.
I just
Yeah.
spent my whole day doing student engagement survey. Honestly, this does not help me at all.
Yeah, I know those two are very hard to understand. The way they kind of compile the information. Yeah.
So I understand the point of comparing us to other colleges,
Correct. Yeah.
which I do know is a big part of this.
Mhm.
So that we can see, okay, the orange line or whatever color that is shows us that that's what other
Correct. Large
large
college,
colleges,
yeah.
I'm assuming large urban,
Large
Okay.
college based on the size.
just on size.
Mhm.
Okay, so that it's showing, so it's doing that, and then the top performing college. So I
Correct.
get the fact that the point of both of these is to compare us to our peers
Correct.
and to see how we're doing in our peers.
Correct.
But I agree with my colleagues as board members, because then if you look at I don't remember how you said the CCSSI one.
Yes.
SSE,
Sassy.
SSE,
Yeah.
that one has an entirely different scale.
Mhm.
And again, it could be a 0 to 100, and we're only seeing up to 70, but I also don't know what the 0 to 100. So perhaps it'd be possible to give us at a later date to actually say, these scores are meant to show.
Sure. Yeah.
Because other than being able to compare us to other colleges, I too am at a total.
Yeah, I don't
loss
know
for
if
what
it's
I'm
norm
seeing.
reference, criterion reference, like this is just a stab in the dark, and it's really hard for us to even know, like, we're like, oh, that trend looks okay-ish.
Do
Like,
I want to do better?
Yeah.
And my one other thing is, I know 6% doesn't sound too bad compared to our peers, but I also don't think it tells us much. Especially when I just heard from just one random but elected student who happens to be sitting here with us.
Yeah.
And even if we're doing it electronically, if we did it with our instructors during class time, so that, okay, you have the next 15 minutes during class time to complete this, and you're not leaving the room or the Zoom or whatever until you do. I mean, there ought to be some ways we could get a little higher participation, so that if we figure out what this is telling us, it would tell us more.
So yeah, let me just add one thing. So the 50% is the average. So then the 50%, yeah, I should have make them all the same, either using the 1 to 100 or 0 to 1. But it's kind of the same. But the 50% or 0.1 and 0.5 are the average of all the participating institutions, their score. So if you got 50, then you're the average among all institutions. But then if you're higher than 50, that means it's, so basically like using your word, normalize. They normalize all the responses from all institutions, and then calculate the average of 50%. And then they calculate each institution in relation to that average score. I don't know whether it's helpful.
So all this is doing is telling us how we relate.
Yeah, because
to
it's a
other
benchmark.
This is like a
schools.
percentile we're in, like I'm
I'm
sorry, I don't wanna like keep
Marking
swirling. Maybe
Yeah.
we need to just take it
Yeah, we can,
offline,
yeah.
and I would like to be able to meet and talk about this, because this is really not,
Mhm.
I don't want, we're just spinning around it, because I don't know that we all know how to interpret what that means right now. So
Okay.
I'm sure there's tons of data.
Yeah, there's a technical
But in
document.
order for us
Yeah.
to really make any leaps into what it's meaning, I think we're just sort of struggling a little bit with what it is. Director Foley.
I think that this was presented in part as proof that guided pathways is working. I cannot make a connection between this data and that conclusion. And if you're going to say that to me, I'm going to sit here and say, okay, when we first started talking about guided pathways, what were we defining as success? And we were defining success as a substantial increase in graduation and completion rates. I think we were talking about 50% increase as our goal. I don't think that's happened. Now, we've had a little bump in the road for 2 years that kind of tossed all of that into the air. And I understand that, but that's really what I want to know, is we went through this gigantic effort. Are we getting any benefit out of it? And if so, how much? That's what I'd like to know. Thanks.
So we are going to be presenting that in December. So we do have some other data. This is just one small piece.
Okay.
So then we'll explain the whole piece. So we will be giving you that information.
And Dr. D, I don't know if she had another question.
Go ahead. I'm asking wait, it's more of a suggestion.
And I guess I need to just ask a question about, this is just gonna give us a reference of how like people are either satisfied, not too satisfied, and this is gonna can give us a picture of, this is probably why we're losing some people and we not having those graduation rates that probably we need. I mean, this is the way we should look at this and go like, okay, we want to be on the top, of course, but then the question would be, what we should do to get up to the top? Or as these charts improve, I think the retention levels are going to go higher, and graduation levels are going to go higher too, right? And everything is going to turn into a better situation for the institution, correct? I mean, is that what this is for? I mean, not going
That's
into
exactly
the
it,
details, into the
Yes, sir.
situation here, which would be great to really know those metrics, because maybe that way we can make maybe some suggestions and see if we can improve in them and monitor them, because that's kind of our role, right? To
Yes.
monitor that goal, because we would like to see more retention, more graduations, more all of that stuff. So I actually kind of clarify that it wasn't just on a particular data that maybe didn't relate to that, but I assume it was. But thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that information.
Okay, so I didn't have a question, but then I thought about a question that I asked Director Baker. Are some of the numbers for this data duplicate, like so multiple students taking multiple surveys? Or when you count that total, is it just all fresh student perspectives?
Because we did the sense, which is an entrance student survey in fall, that is just, we have to control for those are entrance students. But then between surveys, there could be duplication, meaning that they were surveyed in the fall as new students, and then in spring, we surveyed everybody who were enrolled for SESI and SSI, and then we send this link to everybody, but then they're all kind of a individualized link. So you can only use that link once.
Okay.
So is that answer?
That answers the question. So what is the actual total number of student responses you guys had?
So for the first sense survey, the population was about 3,000 to 4,000. So 15 of them responded. The SESI and then SSI are pretty close. It's a 12,000 to 13,000 for each one of them. So SESI was 6% and the SSI was 15% or 13%.
Percent or
Percent of those
15.
13,000. So it's roughly like, I have to count.
Are you asking how many distinct people responded?
Yeah.
Mhm.
I don't know that she can tell you that. I assume they're anonymous surveys, right?
No, I mean, like
Yeah, so-
number of people who actually.
Right, but
responded.
like it's,
Yeah, that's in the.
so like of the 446 that took sense, those 446 could also have been part of who took the other.
Okay, so the
surveys.
number is 446.
For the
That-
sense.
For the sense one, but they can't
And you
differentiate
sent it out
those
to how many people?
446. Right, there's just 446 distinct people took sense.
Okay, my apologies.
Okay.
Let me re-ask this.
Sure.
I work 3 jobs. I didn't get a chance to read. So, no, very true. I did not get a chance to read this. So I
You're
did not
fine.
know that
You're
there
fine.
was a total in there.
Correct numbers.
It didn't get mentioned, so I figured I'll ask how many people actually did respond. So if you calculate those, 3,400, and then that's how you got your 15% for that.
But this, for that one.
Okay.
And this one.
There you go, yeah.
I'm going to agree with Director Baker. Those are very small numbers compared to the population of students that we have. Between listening to this student, hearing one of the instructors slash director of the FAST one come and speak today, and having other discussions and other evidence presented to the board, I think there is work that we need to work on. So that I feel like that is a very low number. And so my suggestion, getting back to that point, was to provide some type of initiative for the student to complete this, because the data is definitely needed. As a student, when I did voter awareness, nonpartisan, of course, here on campus, one of my biggest things was I knew students were busy. Myself, I was busy and homeless at that time. So I needed to give the students a reason to listen to me. And what I did was buy Amazon gift cards, gas cards, Starbucks gift cards, and I will give them the information and I'll raffle it off at the end of, that setting. We have a bookstore, we have a shop in the student center, we have a cafeteria. Students are always hungry, so there's some way to connect to those students to get them to provide the information that we need from them. And speaking to them when they're at the table is probably one of the best things that we can do. So thank you.
If I could just say one last comment really quick, just, so not to like super harp on the numbers, but I do want to kind of bolster the suggestion that was made by, I can't see name placards from here, but
Director
Baker.
Director Baker, thank you so much, and I apologize so much. So, so I think that's an incredibly good idea with having it right in class for students, and then getting to your online students. Your pure online students are just by their very nature going to be the more likely to respond to electronic communications. But I don't want to harp on the numbers, but I do want to kind of just like shed light on what it looks, the stats that, we won't get into that, but the number of students, the participation levels, on average, my classes have ranged from 6 or 8 on the smaller in students to classes of about 25. It's a pretty large class, I would say, at MATC. So if we take a class of 16, which seems to be close to a median average, with these numbers, you're hearing from 1 student in a classroom out of 16 of them. Well, roughly, that would give you 96% of the class accounted for. You hear from 1.02 students. So that's alarmingly low. And this might change. I mean, the world is changing very, very fast. And I do understand that like the students who are coming out at the ages of 18 and 19 and the way that they respond to technological advances and changes in the system are not the way I do. I graduated high school in 2014. Zoom was not a thing I had ever even heard of until a couple of years ago. So there's a high possibility that these younger students, their experience might be different, but I can say for sure that a lot of us students are around my age. Obviously, at a tech school, we have quite a bit of all the categories. So that being said, getting it right in front of the students where they're already in class, and they're being just asked to do this, and you tell them, you don't have to do this, but we'd like you to do this. Generally, if they're given that 15 minutes as a reprieve in their day during class, where it's not this terribly inconvenient thing that just gets buried at the bottom of a list of, honestly, dozens of emails I get every week from MATC, you could see that number go up. And lastly, a big impression of my generation and younger generations with institutions is quite honestly that they're very out of touch. And and this is not personal on anyone or any efforts being made, but it is disheartening to see that these numbers are then taken and extrapolated to essentially, in my opinion, unusable data. And we're not even talking about less than 25%. We're talking about just over 5% of student involvement in these things, which is going to leave a very, very large margin of error. That's live.
Thank you for your thoughts. I appreciate that. In fact, the data that we received is not just in terms of numbers. We also received a lot of the information in a qualitative way. So we've read everything that our students wrote that has been distributed amongst our staff, our teams. And as I said, we're working right now on developing our action plans to ensure we're meeting those gaps where they are. Being a person that I also went through homelessness and food insecurity, I also understand what you are saying. It's difficult for us to convey all of the needs that we go through as first gen. But one of the things that I should say is that I am proud of the team that we're working with. I want to assure all of you that we will continue to look at the data. This is not the only type of data that we will look at. We will continue to engage with our students. It is important for all of us to be on the know of the pulse of the students, of their voice. What is it that they're going through and how we can best meet their specific needs. And with that said, we're involving not just our staff, but also our faculty across the district. Everyone is aware of the data, and now we're going to get to work on this to ensure we're meeting our students where they're at. One more thing I wanted to mention is that we all know that Pathways was implemented during the pandemic. So of course, we are going to see some things that may not have worked and are working now, and we continue to shift and tweak things as we go. That is important for us to understand that although it was throughout the pandemic, the implementation of Pathways, the teams, they continue to work through it to ensure that that the system would work and that the framework would be in place. Now, we will need to continue to evolve on that. It is not in excellent shape. We continue to evolve and we continue to improve upon the work that we're doing, both for in-person and also for online instruction and support. But I want to thank you all for your time, your commitment, and I also want to thank our president, our senior executive team, actually, and the team that works within the EVP team. They're all doing an excellent work in ensuring we are meeting our students, and many of them are working not just in the daytime, in the evening, as well as on Saturdays and Sundays. So I just want to say thank you again for everything that you do to keep us on track.
Thank you for your.
Thank you. Thank you. And I will say from being on the board, this is the first time, so I don't want to come across as we have lots of suggestions, because I know that is that, but we appreciate all of that. And I think with that, we want to be able to understand it. I think there should be, like, we're not, because we could have just said yeah and not even engaged in it. And the fact that we really do read it and want to make sense of it, you should take away, like, it is important work. And so I didn't want to come across as like the only thing we were doing is that, because we appreciate that work. And this is the first time that since I've been on the board that we've gotten detailed student survey results like that. And so because it is important work, We don't want it, we could have just pretended we understood this and we could have just said next
Totally,
report
yeah.
it's time to adjourn. We didn't, so I think from that standpoint, understand that that really means that we are engaged ourselves in this work around student engagement. So I hope that's a takeaway that comes across, and I wanted to share that.
Yes, I just wanted to say we're going to get the information that you requested, as well as how reliable is this information to be used to make judgments about the whole population, because that's the important piece of these surveys, is that they are reliable, that you can make those assumptions, and so we'll give you that information as well.
Good, thank you.
Thank you kindly.
We are at item 9, which is our future events and announcements, and there is, oh, sorry, new business, item 8. I was going there already. I was looking at the time and rather than the item number. So is there any items for new business?
Bylaws next time.
We've got bylaws for next time, and we'll have some homework also around those bylaws.
Last month during this, I had asked, because I had put that placemat in front of everyone about the structural stuff. And so I'd asked just that whether it's in Dr. Martin, in your report, or someplace else, that the board is kept up to date on how we're doing in sort of filling positions that were vacated. We had some high level positions. And so tonight we heard about the PBS manager. Are we keeping structurally the situation with the vice president general counsel having left or whatever? I mean, so I had raised that at the end last time in this new business. That could be just a report that comes to us, or it could be something that's in the next board meeting, but I would like to have that follow up. And the second thing is, we heard this whole thing about Chromebooks and computers for our students, and something that used to be and isn't now or whatever. And I would also love to see some follow up on that, and whether that's in an item that comes before us or in information that just gets sent to the board.
Yeah, I like the second, her last point, we did hear from one of the students here, and it does seem like we should have some discussion around it.
Can I just add to that for a second? She agreed with the Chromebook. I believe at one point when the pandemic started, there was statewide conversations around providing free internet and hotspots in Chromebooks. So, and maybe this is a rainy question or something, but is there any legislation or broader anything? Because obviously we're not the only school that's struggling with access to internet and Chromebooks and all of that. So I'd also be interested if there's anything that anybody else is doing, or statewide or anything like that, to help us understand the broader concern.
And yeah, and I think we can talk about that, Dr. Martin, but I also feel like I want to make sure we're capturing the data around that and not just like a singular story from a person, because remember, we have thousands of students. And so I think just like we were saying, hey, a 6% representative, I don't want to rely just on like, what is the bigger context of that and where specifically as we look at that. So I think there's some data, so some opportunities to maybe do some follow-up, since it seems to have come up in a couple of different comments.
Certainly seems like room for some discussion to be with the FAFSA fund also, because it sounded like they did surveys in her reporting.
Yeah,
So
again,
this was the students that they had contact with, but data would definitely help for sure.
Okay.
I move we adjourn.
Wait, I have a future
She's
event.
giving item 9.
Just like,
I move we talk about item 9.
Wait, did you have parliamentary procedure training? Our next meeting is November 22nd, so 2 days before the holiday. That's, yep, so just a reminder for that. That's the only thing I have announcement. So now I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
The motion's already been made. The question is whether there's a second.
And we have a second, so all those in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you all.
So can we get a monitor?
Thank you. Made a difference tonight, both of you.
No, I was
Thanks.
just thinking, I have to, if I can, I mean, I can put the live stream up here in a